Welcome back to Wargroove Abridged. Previously our little refugee army was fleeing through the forest to escape the undead horde, but we were attacked by the Flower People who, after being defeated, summoned their king or some such fellow. Now this next mission takes place right after the end of the previous mission. We're still in this conversation with the Forest King, Greenfinger. He decides that we're probably here to capture the forest and kill all of the Floran, and before we have a chance to explain, apparently, we just don't explain, a battle breaks out. So we're going to have to win this fight to get the chance to tell them that we were just leaving anyway. Unfortunately, looks like the enemy are breaking out the big trees. They have got a giant Ent type unit on their side. That immediately takes out some poor swordsmen who are hanging out there. We've also been given, though, something to counter these guys with. We can now use trebuchets. These guys can shoot 5 tiles, a nice long range, and they do critical damage when firing at maximum range. So right away we can take off most of the health of that Ent thing. Wanted to see what these guys were strong against, still pretty hard to work out from the icons, but I guess I'll work it out by experience as we go along. As for the surviving Ent, we'll take him out using Emmerich's magic, and that's the end of that. Now we advance towards the middle of the map. This is just a normal battle, just need to get to the right to win and take out their commander or their stronghold. Another of the big boys appears though, coming right for Emmerich. Time to see just how much damage they can actually do to us. Luckily it's not that much. We do have the defense bonus from being on a mountain, so we don't immediately lose our hero or anything like that. Well, that said, we are still going to take a bit of a pummeling from their other units as well. My aggressive strategy of usually putting the hero out in front can be punished because you lose if the hero dies, and it is difficult to estimate how much damage you're going to take in a given turn. Luckily in this case all their attacks only take us down to like half health, so we'll be fine. The trebuchets behind our little mountain can now shoot over it to start dealing damage back to the enemy. First we mostly neutralise the Ent guy, so that's all good. This pikeman will take a position on this mountain tile, foregoing the chance to make an attack, so potentially wasting their power for that turn, but we're seeing if defending will pay off in any way essentially. To the south, some swordsmen take out a unit of pikes that was already damaged by my other trebuchet. Those guys are going to come around to flank the enemy next turn, as long as they're still alive, and Emmerich can finish off the Ent guy in front of him. This though I thought might have been a mistake, because in this game, having weak enemy units at the front is kind of useful for you, because they block the movements of the stronger enemy units behind them. So being surrounded by a bunch of weak enemies is kind of good, because they act like a shield, they stop strong attacks coming in. Anyway, something to think about. The attacks do come in, and pretty much all of their units we can see are in range of our guys, so we are going to take a pummeling, and now Emmerich is starting to look like he might actually die. That cav charge does a load of damage. This archer volley surprisingly doesn't do that much, even though I think it might have been a critical archer volley as well. These pikes are too damaged to do much damage, but they are still contributing. He's now on very low health and he can barely do any damage back to them, so he's becoming rather useless. Just need to keep him alive at this point. These swords go for our poor doggos. Even with their +4 defense, they are wrecked and can't do much damage in return. And in a similar vein, their dog unit attacks my dog unit here in this forest, so it's time to see what's better, the first strike or having +3 defense, and the answer is the first strike. Since +4 is the max defense, this game is really focused on attack. Even having the maximum possible defender's advantage, it's still better to attack in that position, so really you always want to attack and kind of ignore the terrain. Just use it as a backup in case you get attacked after you've done something in your turn, I think. Anyway, those dogs can get taken out easily because these pikes will get a critical bonus from the pikes behind them, so there they go. Then our trebuchets need to open fire. One gets a critical hit because it's firing at maximum range and annihilates a sword unit. The other one fires at the pikes nearby. They're already pretty much dead, so this is kind of wasting their damage, but there wasn't much else I could do with them this turn. The other thing I could have fired at was the cav, but for the cav we can move in with the pikes and attack instead to get their bonus against cav. We don't get a critical attack, so it's not enough to kill them, but they're pretty much neutralised. So that's the situation where if we just leave them there, they're not going to do very much to us, and they might stop someone else doing more to us. Well, it's hard to know really. Emmerich absorbs some souls from a nearby village, thus getting his health back to max, so that's all safe. These swordsmen now swoop in from the south to damage these archers, just going to stop them doing too much in their own turn, and then the swords will just be out there as a tank, as a sacrifice to put it more realistically, since they're cheap. My last move for the turn was possibly a mistake. I decided to have my dogs attack the archers as well to further weaken them. But doing this puts the dogs in a very vulnerable position, and they are indeed immediately taken out when some more archers appear. And the loss of those dogs means I don't have them sitting on the mountain providing their long line of sight, and that could be a problem in a Fog of War map. The swords do their job, taking this random attack from the nearly dead cav and almost killing them with a counter-attack. They're so weak they couldn't quite finish them off. Now here's a really cheeky move. This unit of swords runs past our line to take out the village that was weakened by Emmerich stealing their souls, so now we've lost a bit of income. I use Emmerich's Groove to slap down the Elder Shield. Since we're mostly fighting in this one area, I thought we might as well take the defensive bonus, although as I said, relying on a defensive bonus is a bad idea. These pikes can move in to get a crit hit on those freshly arrived archers, so that's the end of them. Then a trebuchet can finish off those swordsmen who took my village. I thought I'd take the village back with these cav, but this is me discovering that you can't do it with cav, only foot units can capture buildings, so the cav can just hang around instead. The main tactical concern right now is that there's an Ent coming along the southern road, and to deal with it, the sacrifice swords are going to come in very handy. We move them to stand next to the Ent, taking out some nearly dead archers along the way. And as I hoped, the Ent comes in to attack the swords, pretty much wasting its turn and not moving towards our more valuable unit. So that's what was achieved through their sacrifice. Probably worth it, not really sure of course. Now, to deal with it properly, everything just started moving away because we didn't have any good way of attacking it. We need to draw it close to our trebuchets, and things went exactly as we need them to. While they ran in and attacked this pike unit, taking them out in one hit, they're now standing exactly 5 tiles from a trebuchet unit, the range to get the critical damage. So we take a shot and can instantly mostly kill the Ent guy. Emmerich can run in to use his magic and finish the deal off. And that's going to be a whole load of money denied from the enemy. Those things I later discovered are very expensive to buy. I also discovered right now that the Elder Shield can just be destroyed. Some archers take it out, so goodbye to that defensive bonus, although I'm not sure we were actually using it at all, so never mind. In the north, after a couple of turns of hacking away, I was able to capture this village from the enemy. So now we have the economic advantage. We'll win eventually if we keep spamming units more than the enemy do and we keep trading efficiently. For that purpose, I've got a wagon out so we can bring these units up to the front as soon as they're made. But then there is still the matter of our score to think about. Doing the stage fast is what the game encourages. So we want to rush as much as possible, even though waiting around would make victory inevitable after a while. So, to start going along that path, Emmerich rushes out to take out a bunch of archers standing on that road. However, we are punished for this aggression because another one of those Ent guys appears from the Fog of War and will get a free attack on Emmerich. He's got that +3 defense bonus, whatever that means, so perhaps he took a bit less damage there. Plus, he does a decent amount of damage back to the thing because of his high attack values. Then, that guy appearing just to the right of the Ent is the enemy leader. If we kill him, we can win. That or the stronghold in the top right, that treehouse looking building. So we want to generally focus on going up and right now. Emmerich needs to run away because he's about to get swarmed by everything, and if the enemy leader is anything like as powerful as ours, having him and the Ent right there will spell danger. We do still have to take at least one pounding from the Ent, which is actually called a Gloom Giant, by the way, in case you were wondering. But at least Emmerich is a man who can take a pounding from a giant tree, just loses a bit of health and does some damage back, and no other major pursuit coming in the middle there. I had made an attack towards the top right with a couple of units to see if we could cheekily decap the enemy barracks or something. Unfortunately, the enemy took out the dogs, providing line of sight, which renders the knights pretty much useless because you can't attack things you can't see, and they're overwhelmed anyway. Trebuchets then dispatch that Gloom Giant, and all is good in the middle. In fact, I was feeling so confident that I did this very pointless move. I moved Emmerich up to take out this nearly dead cavalry unit, and now he's once again out there in a nice vulnerable position. And indeed the enemy do take advantage of this. The enemy hero Greenfinger comes in for an attack, and with our health already low, this again puts Emmerich in a dangerous position. we do negligible damage back, and now we cross our fingers to see how much other stuff they've got which can attack Emmerich this turn. First, some dogs. Almost kill him, he's down to like 10% health, negligible damage back once again. Another Gloom Giant appears, so we're going to take a pounding soon. We're going to have to run no matter what the result of this turn is. In the north, we're still being harassed as I try to give up on my little push in that direction. Some archers appear and also attack Emmerich. Luckily though, they're nearly dead, so they don't do much damage. If they'd had any more health, Emmerich would have been done for. We just got away with it there. He can now run back, collect up those delicious souls, and he is healthy once again. A very close call. Now at this stage we're going to change strategy and basically push as much stuff as we can along the little northern route past the mountain at the top towards where the enemy barracks is, in an attempt to decap it and prevent the enemy from spamming more units. Since this battle is just one of attrition, both sides are ploughing units into each other and we're not really making any progress, it's time to go for a big push. I send some scout/sacrificial dogs onto those mountains near the middle to see what's going on the enemy side of the map, and we can see plenty of enemy units. Time to see what they'll do to us. A Gloom Giant pushes in to have another pop at Emmerich, but we've already seen this isn't going to be enough to take him out, and the Gloom Giant will now be vulnerable to our trebuchets. Our dogs shrug off a few arrows, some swords come to die against Emmerich, and that's the end of the enemy offensive. Their hero just moves slightly away, and that would have been the biggest blow they could deal if he'd run in to attack Emmerich. Potentially he'd be nearly dead, but they're not going to risk it. They're not like me, I suppose. The Trebs instantly take that Gloom Giant down to basically no health, and now Emmerich's attack will be enough to finish it off. We don't want to charge in with him this turn, so it's nice to have him sit back in the forest and regen a bit. The enemy leader actually remarks on us killing that guy, and I'm not sure, but maybe this means the enemy can't buy them anymore. Maybe there was a limit to how many they could make, just in case you got really bogged down in this stage, and that little text was representing it running out. Now the enemy leader pulls out his Groove. This is a move that creates temporary walls on the battlefields, these vines which you may have seen there. The enemy can move through them, but we can't, so effectively it gives the enemy some kind of a defender's advantage. Our scouts/sacrifice/dogs do get taken out down there towards the south, so now we don't have that line of sight, but we do know the enemy have various units down there, which bodes well for my plan to attack mostly along the north. As long as the enemy are a bit distracted, we'll have 1 or 2 turns where they can't bring their full strength against us. So time to start pushing in that direction. Some Trebs, wipe out some dogs in the area, and we shuffle up into that little corner. Some enemy cav come in to attack Emmerich while he's standing around, but because he's got the Elder Shield on him, he takes reduced damage even though he's standing in the open, and is generally fine. These pikes think they can add enough to the damage to make it count, and, spoiler alert, they can't. Now in our turn, I'm going to take a nice aggressive move. Even though there are enemies all over the place who will be able to attack us in their next turn, I'm going to push this Treb up into this little gap, because from that gap it can fire at the enemy barracks. So this way we don't have to push everything all the way over there to decap it, we can take it from here if we can hold out. Now then, our priority needs to be avoiding taking damage on the trebuchet so it can have its maximum attacking power, and that means it's time for meat shields. These knights charge in to stand in front of the trebuchet, and they can even take out these pikes since the pikes were already damaged from fighting Emmerich. The other Treb unit isn't going to move, because I'm going to use those guys to take out those enemy cav since they are a high power unit. Bang, away they go. I think cav are specifically weak against trebuchet attacks, so it does extra damage. The enemy leader is still here though, and he might be able to take down Emmerich with help from a few of his henchmen, so we need to do as much damage to him as possible using things that aren't Emmerich, so that Greenfinger's attacking power is reduced. For that purpose, some knights and pikes just go at him, doing some damage and taking more damage back, but now that he's lower on health it's going to be less of a threat, plus we've limited his movement options by just crowding the area up. Now let's see what the enemy actually does back to us. A half-hearted archer attack there does very little, and Greenfinger just runs away, and that was really the extent of their turn. That was perfect. Now the momentum is thoroughly on our side. Our Treb can fire at the enemy barracks and take it down to 10% health. I'm unfortunately slightly too close to the barracks to do critical damage. If you get a crit, you can take it out in one hit. Still though, these archers apparently have a chance to take it out. Our attacking power is pretty low because of our previously taken damage, and it turns out we can take the enemy barracks down to like 1 health or something. We can't quite decap it this turn. That's pretty annoying. While that was going on, by the way, I did capture a village in the south with very little resistance, and just having these units down here will provide a nice distraction. Now the enemy might have to split their forces if the AI is feeling like defending that bottom area as well. The enemy turn isn't particularly impressive. They're struggling to reach us right now because of the terrain, but one important move they do make is they take out this almost dead unit of pikes that was giving us line of sight on the enemy barracks. And you can't attack things outside of your line of sight, which means the trebuchets can't fire unless someone moves up to stand in a really dangerous position. So these rangers are going to have to suffice. They're nearly dead anyway, so it's not that much of a loss. Plus, as they move up, they can shoot back at this nearly dead dog unit. Annoyingly though, they didn't quite kill it, and that's going to prove to be especially inconvenient. I've got both my trebs stacked up here now, and I'm going to fire with the one that's slightly further away. You can see there that with the critical damage, it can do well over enough to kill a barracks in 1 hit, so we'll just totally overkill it, and there we go, it's decapped. The thing is, what I would have liked to do is run Emmerich in to capture it right now, but because that dog unit is just about still alive and in the way, we can't do it. The risk then is that the enemy will just recapture the barracks, and this won't be a huge blow to them. The other treb takes out the nearby cav, so that's handy. Now I do one last cheeky move this turn, which is to move my own cav all the way down to the south, where they can run their full distance and thus get a critical attack on that village, decapturing it. So now the enemy are starting to run out of resources very fast. They use their pikes to take out my rangers, but that means they didn't use them to recapture the barracks, and victory is now guaranteed. We quickly capture the barracks in our turn and start closing in on the last little bit of enemy territory. Really, they've just got Greenfinger, who is hiding in the corner, and he comes out to fight with Emmerich, but if he can't kill him in 1 hit himself, then there's no real point in him doing anything. Now he's just standing there and will be vulnerable to attack. We're not going to have to bother going after the enemy's treehouse. The trebs can get him. The treb on the left can do critical damage. Not enough to kill him right now, but it's enough to nearly kill him. So we'll do that, and now we'll give Emmerich the honour of laying the final blow on the enemy commander. With that, we've successfully accidentally conquered the forest people, the Gloom Forest as I think it was called. However, as you might have guessed, this is going to turn out to be one of those plot elements where it was all a huge misunderstanding. We take them down, but then the enemy king is visited by one of his lesser officers, who quickly explains that actually we're just refugees from the human kingdom outside the forest, we're trying to go somewhere else, and generally we're supposed to be in some kind of alliance. And the king's like, oh right, okay, now I realise it was all a huge misunderstanding, we almost genocided them, but luckily we stopped at the very last second. So they now agree to help us continue on towards Heavensong, this other state which is somewhere off to the east, who may or may not help us against the undead uprising. They're going to send Nuru, this warrior who cleared up this whole misunderstanding, with us as an additional hero to help us out, and we'll get to use her in a couple of upcoming stages. So yes, that's that sorted. We are successfully through the Gloom Forest, and we even managed to earn a B rank, which I didn't expect. I thought I'd be getting the minimum rank since I played it quite slow and attrition-y, but apparently it wasn't that slow and attrition-y. I was just aggressive enough to please the game a bit. It is explained here that to get to this place, Heavensong will have to go through the Lost League, some sort of mystical swamp place, so we'll be taking a look at that in the next part of this Abridged campaign. Doing this stage also unlocked a couple of side missions, but as I mentioned last time, I won't bother including the side missions in this. I'm probably going to keep it to roughly 1 stage per episode, since they're about long enough to fill up that amount of time, although a couple of the ones coming up are quite short, so I'm probably going to break that rule right away. Anyway, so as I said, join me next time as we leave the forest and head into the mystical swamps, where the undead are going to be once again on our heels.